Every year, the moment a major championship ends, hundreds of millions of people reach for their phones at exactly the same moment. Comment or highlights clip gets shared. A result gets searched. A streaming platform logs its single busiest minute of the year. The traffic spike is enormous. It arrives within seconds, and it is handled without anyone pressing a button, without anyone making a call, without anyone waking up at 2 in the morning. How does the infrastructure know what to do? This is not a rhetorical question. There is a real, mechanical answer, and understanding it changes how you think about infrastructure that claims to respond to demand automatically. Start with why a human-in-the-loop doesn't work. Imagine handling a traffic spike required a decision every time. Someone watches a dashboard, CPU utilization climbs. They open a console, provision new servers, wait for them to boot and register, redirect traffic. Meanwhile, the spike arrived 90 seconds ago. The damage, slow responses, timed-out requests, users who hit an error and left, happened while the engineer was still typing the first command. Manual scaling fails at the speed modern traffic demands. A spike that begins and peaks within a few minutes cannot wait for human reaction time. But the problem runs in the other direction too. An engineer who provisions 10 extra servers during a crisis and then gets pulled into a meeting has just left 10 servers running, burning money for however long it takes someone to remember they are there. Manual scaling is slow to respond going up and slow to respond going down. Both failures cost something. The solution has to be automatic, and for it to be automatic, it has to be driven by rules, agreed in advance, applied continuously, without anyone in the loop. You already live with systems that work this way. Consider cruise control. You set a target speed, say 110 kilometers per hour, and take your foot off the accelerator. The car does not lock the engine at a fixed output and hope for the best. It measures your actual speed continuously. When you start climbing a hill and the speed begins to drop, it adds power to compensate. When you crest and begin descending, it reduces power to avoid overshooting. You set the rule once, the system applies it without your involvement for as long as cruise control is engaged. This is the architecture that makes auto-scaling work. You do not instruct the system to add 3 servers at 2 p.m. on Saturdays. You define a rule: when this measured condition crosses this threshold, take this action. The system evaluates the condition on a continuous loop, and when the threshold is crossed, the action fires, automatically, immediately, without a human decision point anywhere in the chain. Auto-scaling is the mechanism by which cloud infrastructure adjusts its own capacity based on real-time measurements. It is not a setting you toggle on and forget. It is a rule engine, a set of policies you define that specify what to measure, what thresholds should trigger a response, what that response should be, and how long to wait before the policy can fire again. A concrete policy might look like this: if the average CPU utilization across all running servers in this group exceeds 75% for 5 consecutive minutes, add 2 servers to the group. If average CPU utilization falls below 30% for 10 consecutive minutes, remove 1 server from the group. Never let the group fall below 2 servers. Never let it grow beyond 50. That last part, the minimum and maximum, matters more than it might seem. The minimum prevents your service from scaling down to nothing during a quiet period and then having no capacity when the first request arrives. The maximum is a financial and operational ceiling. It prevents a runaway scaling event from provisioning hundreds of servers in response to a metric that is misbehaving rather than genuine demand. Every auto-scaling policy operates within a bounded range, not as an open-ended instruction to grow indefinitely. The 5 minutes and 10 minutes in that policy are cooldown periods, deliberate pauses built in to prevent the system from overreacting to brief fluctuations. A CPU spike that lasts 30 seconds might be a single expensive database query. One that holds for 5 minutes is a pattern. The cooldown is how the system distinguishes noise from signal. Set it too short, and your infrastructure oscillates, servers added and removed in rapid cycles that create their own instability. Set it too long, and the system is slow to respond to real demand. Tuning cooldowns is one of the less glamorous but more consequential parts of getting auto-scaling right. Here is where the cruise control analogy earns a second look, because it reveals the most important and most frequently underestimated decision in auto-scaling: what you choose to measure. Early cruise control systems had a well-known limitation. They measured speed after the fact. They detected that the car had already slowed before adding power. The result was a slightly uneven ride on hills. Speed would dip, power would surge. Speed would overshoot the target, power would cut back, a cycle of corrections that never quite settled. The system was always reacting to the past, not the present. Modern adaptive cruise control addressed this by looking ahead. Radar sensors measure the gap to the vehicle in front and begin adjusting before the speed has changed, anticipating the situation rather than responding to it. Auto-scaling has the same problem. CPU utilization is the metric most people reach for first, because it is the most visible and the most intuitive. High CPU means the servers are working hard, but CPU utilization is a lagging indicator. By the time your servers are running at 80% CPU, users are already experiencing degradation. The spike has arrived and is in full effect. You are measuring its consequence, not its approach. Better metrics for many applications are ones that lead rather than lag. The depth of a request queue, how many incoming requests are waiting to be handled at this moment, begins rising before the servers are saturated. Response latency, how long requests are actually taking to complete, starts climbing before CPU maxes out. These signals give the auto-scaling policy time to act while there is still room to absorb the load without users noticing anything at all. Choosing the right metric is not a configuration detail. It is the difference between a scaling system that gets ahead of demand and one that chases it. Some platforms go further. They use scheduled scaling alongside metric-based scaling. If you know with reasonable confidence that traffic spikes every weekday morning at 9, you can instruct the system to add capacity at 8:50 before the signal arrives and remove it by 11. Scheduled scaling trades the precision of reactive measurement for the reliability of a known pattern. The best configured systems use both: scheduled scaling to handle predictable shapes, metric-based scaling to handle everything else. The less obvious half of auto-scaling is scale-in, removing servers when demand falls. This direction gets less attention, but it is where things can go quietly wrong. Removing a server sounds straightforward. Demand has dropped. The server is underutilized. Take it out of rotation. But underutilized is not the same as idle. A server running at 20% CPU may be in the middle of handling a request that started 45 seconds ago. Removing it at that moment drops the request entirely. The user receives an error, a broken transaction, an incomplete file transfer. Well-implemented scale-in handles this through a process called connection draining. When a server is selected for removal, the first thing that happens is it stops receiving new requests. The load balancer stops routing new traffic to it. But it is not immediately shut down. It continues processing whatever it is currently handling, and only once all in-flight work is completed is the server actually terminated. The result is a shutdown that is invisible to users who are mid-request, at the cost of a slightly longer scale-in process. That is the right trade. Speed in the wrong direction creates errors. A graceful exit does not. This asymmetry, scaling out fast, scaling in carefully, is intentional. The cost of scaling out too slowly is user-facing degradation. The cost of scaling in too carelessly is user-facing errors. Both failures are visible. The policies are designed to avoid both, which is why they behave differently in each direction. What you understand now is that auto-scaling is not magic, and it is not a human watching dashboards. It is a rule engine running on a continuous loop, measuring real signals, comparing them to thresholds you have defined in advance, and firing capacity changes when those thresholds are crossed. The quality of that system depends entirely on the decisions made before any traffic arrives, which metric to watch, what thresholds to set, how long the cooldowns should be, how gracefully scale-in is handled. Get those decisions right, and the infrastructure manages itself. Traffic spikes arrive, capacity expands to meet them, and somewhere an engineer does not get a phone call at 2 in the morning. Get them wrong, and the system scales at exactly the wrong time, for exactly the wrong reason. Not because auto-scaling failed, but because the rules it was following were not as good as the situation required.